Welcome back to the Aftermatch with Kirst Beav. Liam Messham's gone somewhere in Chile Airport, Santiago, I believe they are. The Aftermatch coming to you from all over the world to make sure that you get your analysis, your reviews, your entertainment, all sorted for your week. Like and subscribe so you know exactly when these podcasts are going to be dropping. Sporadic times because we've got people in sporadic places, Beav.
Yeah, and apologies because I'm actually just next to the travelator, that walking thing that speeds up, and someone just walked on it. So it's actually just started up in the background. But yeah, I've got rid of Liam. I've sent him off. He actually, after we did our first review of the All Blacks, he started to make sort of noises that he thinks podcast life could be for him. So I don't want him cutting my grass, so I've binned him from this one.
Okay, so this is the Aftermatch Part 2. Part 1, we reviewed the All Blacks. Part 2, we want to review the other rugby championship match. The Boks being beaten at probably the second hardest place to play in rugby beef. Eden Park, number 1. Ellis Park, and I'm curious to see what you think, number 2 hardest place to go and play and win against the Boks. And the Wallabies have just done it.
I think, Kirst, to be brutally honest, yes, the record of Eden Park is unmatched, unrivaled anywhere in the world. But as far as hostile, as far as intimidating, and you combine the week leading into it in Joburg, you combine what you're going into as far as the opposition. Obviously, teams outside of New Zealand would say possibly Eden Park would be in the conversation. But I know from our point of view, I would say Ellis Park, Springboks, it does not get any more intimidating and tough to go and get the points. So it is a remarkable result, Kirst.
There's all these numbers, there's all these records. 63 years since the Wallabies have beaten the Springboks at Ellis Park. 2011, the last time the Wallabies beat South Africa in South Africa. That was the last time that James O'Connor was playing. The deficit that they were able to overcome and the 33 unanswered points in the second half. But honestly, if I said to you, Beav, even a few months ago, and I know you've always been hot on the Wallabies this year, from what you've seen, the little snippets you've seen, but did you honestly think that we would be sitting here saying the Wallabies have just beaten the Lions and the Springboks back-to-back?
No, I would have had them beating the Lions, but I said last week on our show here, I said things have escalated as far as how tough the challenge is, because I thought this would be way greater challenge, and it probably is. But they somehow have turned around a 22-point deficit. And, I mean, we've just talked about how intimidating it was. I saw some Australians in the crowd. There was a fair few Australians in the crowd, and obviously the commentators and the cameras all cut to them when Australia was doing good. It's one of those places, genuinely, Kirst, an intimidating, ferocious sort of hostile environment, and the likes of which I don't think you can get anywhere else in the world. So, no, I don't quite believe how far they have come. It is remarkable. It's wonderful for rugby on a global sense, not just in Australia, where all of a sudden they'll be starting to take some interest around it again. The Wallabies have become relevant again, as they talk about in Australia.
Where did it all go wrong for the Boks? When they had the lead that they had at halftime, and you said that you saw the score at halftime, and everyone thought, oh, this is going to be a cricket score. Rassie Erasmus described that performance as dog shit. Where did it go wrong for South Africa?
Well,
which is an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of dog shit performances. I've been a part of a lot of dog shit performances. By dog shit standards, it wasn't that big a dog shit performance. They were outstanding early doors. They were scoring after 2 minutes. Then they sort of backed it up, and they were getting through their phases. They were attacking extremely entertaining. They were sharp, and Lebok was running the show brilliantly. Creel and the likes. Fussy was at fullback. So they were doing damage. But where I guess it started to turn, the tide started to turn, was sort of around that 25th minute, 30th minute. The Australians started to get turnover penalties. They started to challenge them at the breakdown in McRae, and the loose forward trio in general at the breakdown was very impressive for the Wallabies. But guys like Slipper were getting turnover penalties. And all of a sudden, once they started to get the penalties, they started to control a bit of territory. And that sort of just broke the momentum up for South Africa. They got a try of their own, 22-5. Maybe a bit of belief came in. But things like South Africa going to the corner just on half-time, fumbling a line-out, again, a big boost for Australia. The amount of times Australia repelled the Springboks on their own goal line, you know how in the past it would have felt inevitable that the Springboks were just going to get across the line, the Australians were able to stop them. And I guess that was a big tick as far as time and time again, they sent them away. The handling of the Springboks when it counted most, and this is where I think probably Rusty was talking about his dog shit performance. In isolation, there was passes behind, there was passes to no one, there was drop passes. Just after they had done sort of 12 phases, 15 phases, and had Australia on the ropes, they just couldn't execute after that first 20 minutes and get any more points, as the scoreboard showed, Kirst. But that combined with Australia starting to get a bit of control, a bit of speed into the game. We often talk about, you can never really take the Springboks to that place where they're in the dark place as far as fitness goes now because they've got the bomb squad coming on. But the way Australia played at altitude, you could see even the big boys were starting to suck the big ones in after 30 minutes, Kirst.
You told us a week ago, less than a week ago, how to beat South Africa in South Africa. You gave us the recipe. Were they listening?
Well, look, it's been a long time since Joe's probably listened to anything I've said, probably since the secondary school days when he was an assistant coach to me. But they were doing things like, instead of just having a set piece, going a close ruck, which is, I guess, a formula for most teams as far as exiting their 20, their 30, they were shifting it. They were brave enough to shift it to the outside wing. They would get it to a Jorgensen, a Peach, a Wright, and they would kick in the outside channels. And what that did was it allowed them to isolate either Fussy or another winger by himself, but it also meant that the ball stayed on the field and the Springbok forward pack had to go from the scrum or the line out and run back to rucks. And as I said, it was noticeable that all of a sudden you were seeing shots of those big South African forwards really sucking in the big ones and getting slower than the Wallabies were back to rucks.
Let's talk about some individuals. For the second time in a number of tests, we've seen Tate McDermott, the winger.
Oh, brilliant. A couple of his touches. A couple of his touches on the wing, it's as if he's an international winger. He really was. There was a play there in the second half where he's come screaming down the near touchline, done a little chip kick. Him and Jorgensen got on the end of it. It was he can play it pretty easy. The other thing that the McDermott and White combination has shown is White's in the form of his life at the moment. They've got
Why
to be
is he going?
Well, they've got to be begging him to say, do we want to rethink this? You're starting number 9 for the Wallabies at the moment.
They want to rethink White. They want to rethink Joe Schmidt coming back to New Zealand rather than sitting there as head coach. And what did you think of James O'Connor, Beav?
Yeah.
That was a huge, huge performance considering he hasn't even played rugby since the back end of Super Rugby where he was getting about 15, 20 minutes off the bench. He hasn't played international rugby for 3 years, let alone to go there at altitude, Beav, and play 80 minutes.
We touched on it, Kirst. And first fives, you might think that this one, wouldn't fit the bill as far as that goes. But fitness-wise, first fives are usually, if not the fittest, one of the fittest in the team. But as you mentioned, he's gone from playing 10 to 15-minute cameos at the Crusaders to going 80 minutes at altitude with the Wallabies. So, first of all, it'd be his first 80 minutes for I don't know how long.
Years.
Years. And secondly, though, we talked about the bravery that the Australian team had to go to the width in their own 22 and then kick, as opposed to just doing a nice safe option and then box kicking out. That's the beauty of having someone like James O'Connor who's not going to be afraid to back himself and to play with a little bit of, I guess, be a bit sort of daring when it comes to that sort of play, which was needed to break up the game. But I thought he looked so assured, so comfortable out there. He's a naturally confident footballer and confident person. So I guess you shouldn't be surprised, but he just looks so at home. And when you think about the alternatives that could have been there in the Wallabies jersey, respectfully, none of them would have been able to walk into that environment in that situation and play like they'd been there all their life, like James O'Connor did at the weekend.
Yeah, it's phenomenal what he has been able to do. This is a random question for you. I've just thought about it, and I'm not trying to get clickbait here. But
here we go.
Right now, based on form, not based on what we've seen in the past or whatever, if you looked at the All Blacks backline and the Wallabies backline, what All Blacks would you take and what Wallabies would you take in each position on form?
Well, geez, that's a hell of a question, isn't it? I mean,
Give me your All Blacks on form that you're taking. If you can pick anyone from those two backlines, you're obviously taking Will Jordan. He's a lock-in.
taking Will Jordan, taking Bowden Barrett.
What about your two wingers? Where are they coming from?
It might be one each. I think Jorgensen is in pretty hot form at the moment. And then either Sevu or Rico. Centre-wise, Joseph Suoliti is obviously starting to pay back that 1.6 million pretty quickly, if he hasn't already. And then
I think he did that in England last year, Beav.
Yeah, he probably did. It's a great question, Kirst. When I looked at, how I've been pretty hot on Ikitau all Super Rugby season and what a good footballer he is. Geez, he was impressive. He obviously...
Geordie.
He got banged up a bit. Oh, geez, I was impressed with Geordie too. I know some of the scribes who obviously know rugby a lot more than I do in New Zealand didn't give Geordie the rating he deserves, I thought. But I thought live he was very, very good, the way he freed up the outside. So through loyalty to New Zealand, I'll go Geordie there. But Ikitau had a massive, massive impact on that result there. Some of his creativity.
Halfback?
Great question. Cortez was as good as any there yesterday, but probably Nick White, just for the occasion. So is that a 3-year or 4-3?
Yeah, that's a 50-50 split. That's so impressive because 6 months ago, it would not have been like that.
No,
You
exactly.
probably would have picked all Blacks except for one. That just shows where this team is at.
But of course, because you are asking me a question to do with one weekend of rugby, this amalgamated Anzac team.
We're allowed to have some fun.
This amalgamated Anzac team. But yeah, that Max Jorgensen. I don't know if he's as good as I think he is, or just Sean Maloney's commentary is luring me in. But I tell you what, if Max Jorgensen's a single man, I reckon he just goes out with Sean Maloney and gets Sean Maloney to introduce him everywhere he goes, because I'm sure he'll have plenty of takers, because he is something else, and there's nothing better than hearing an excited Maloney go absolutely through the roof about him.
Oh, he goes berserk. And while I absolutely love Sean Maloney, he is the lead commentator for Stan Sport Channel 9 in Australia. Do you remember last year when they beat England, Beav? And he said, that is the greatest Wallabies win we have ever seen. Well, I think he said that 2 weeks ago when they beat the Lions in the third test. He's running out of greatest Wallabies performances because Tim Horan just said that he has never been more proud to be a Wallaby than that performance against the Boks on the weekend.
Yeah, and coming from the great Tim Horan, if not their best ever second five. Of course, I've seen it all through the Australian papers. They are saying it is their greatest performance, and who can argue when you think 22-0 down? Australia rugby doesn't have all these legends and Hall of Famers like they have in the past, where they've got the Gregans, the Larkhams, the Eels of the world, the Burks, and what have you. So, although they probably might be starting to develop a few of their own, because, geez, some guys stood up. You look at that loose forward trio. Geez,
without Valentini.
Without Valentini, and me and Liam were watching the game together, and he mentioned how tough Valentini's replacement was going, and of course Harry Wilson. Geez, he's turning into some leader of the Wallabies, isn't he?
Yeah, hopefully he's back available for this week. They've got a couple of injuries. A couple of boys have jumped back on a plane back to Australia, and replacements are heading over. What chance do you give them, Beav, of doing it again in Cape Town?
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, if someone had told you at the start of the tour they'll get one victory, you'd say, oh yeah, they must pick up Cape Town. They might get blown away early doors in Joburg. All of a sudden, it's going to be game on. Of course, it's going to be a different beast that comes at them. It's going to be a very hurt beast. If they've been listening to being called dog shit all week by Rassie Erasmus, the Springboks are going to be fairly pumped up. But, you couple that with the fact that the Aussies have now got confidence, which they would not have felt for a long, long time. It'd be interesting to see how much changes there is to the Springbok team. Obviously, Delande was a late sort of withdrawal. Does Labok stay there, who often gets sort of used as, I won't say a scapegoat, but he's often in and out of the Springboks. Of course, Sasha and...
They'll bring Sasha back, I bet you. I
Yeah.
bet you they changed their team completely. This is just what they do because they've got so much depth. So from one week to the next, the teams are always changing.
Yeah, I think they'll have a change at fullback too. I was a bit, I thought Fussy a couple of times got put into a bit of space, but they managed to pick him up, and I don't know if it was a pace thing or not, but they seemed to create opportunities. They just couldn't finish it, and obviously, what's Cheslin Colby's injury situation, Kirst? Is he a significant one, or?
Well, I'm sure he'll be playing at Eden Park. Doesn't it get juicy
We
in
have something to
2.5
believe.
weeks' time?
It certainly, I guess, just amplifies things now because from a championship point of view, the Springboks are going to have to come to New Zealand and win.
Must win. Must win
Must
both almost.
Yeah, well, I mean, if All Blacks can grab 2 away victories, I guess pole position is the cliche that you would have to say is well and truly where the All Blacks would sit.
Okay, just finally, before we let you go and catch your flight, on the dog shit comments, what's the greatest spray a coach has ever given you? What team and what coach?
Geez, great question. Funny enough, I reckon some of the best ones I had, I was thankfully blissfully unaware because they were from Japanese coaches. Because I just told the translator, don't bother telling me. But no, to be honest with you, I haven't been. Actually, speaking of South Africa, probably Gary Gold, who was a assistant coach with the Springboks for years. A couple of his ones from Bath days, they were all time, and they had some philosophy about them. But no, generally. Ian would just make me feel guilty at the Chiefs, what's the saying? Not angry, just disappointed. But
he wouldn't call you names.
No, and he certainly wouldn't refer to anything to do with dogs. No, and look, Rusty might just putting it out there in the public just so the boys, they're not going to be able to avoid it. They will read about it, they'll hear about it because comments like that are great. You're in the clickbait world, Kirst. You try
So
to bring
are
me
you,
into it.
Beav?
You try and bring me into it every now and again. So they're going to see nothing but dog shit quote all week.
I'll tell you what it does show, Beav. After the Wallabies beat the Lions and have beaten the Springboks, it shows you that Super Rugby's not too bad and that URC is a pretty low level competition.
Yeah,
You're right.
Well, maybe the Boxers have to get back to Super Rugby. Maybe that's been not a great breeding ground for Test match footy. Who knows?
If they go 0-2, absolutely. Go and get your flight, Beav. That is the Aftermatch with Kirst Beav. Like and subscribe so you get notified every time we drop a new podcast. That is the Aftermatch part 2 for the week. More to come.